Welcome to the Intuitive Inc. radio show live with your host, Servet Hassan, with another inspiring author who can help you discover your true potential. Live on Clear Source Radio.
Hello, everybody. It is Sunday night. The name of the show is Intuitive Inc., and I am Servet Hassan. We've got a great show for you tonight. It's going to be all about mastering the art of creation and bringing heaven back to earth. I've got a really amazing author on the line. He's also a radio host, a speaker, an energy master, and a visionary. His name is Les Jensen, and he's written an amazing book, Forgiven Sinner, God's Last Savior. Welcome, Les. How are you?
Hey, thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm delighted to be here.
Oh, thank you for doing it. I know you're calling in from Denver, Colorado, so that's nice of you. I mean, it's a Sunday night, taking time away from your family and your own time to call into the show. I read your book. I loved it. It was awesome. I think you put something we all need to know in very simple terms. God's Savior, Forgiven Sinner, God's Last Savior. How did you come up with that title?
You know, I didn't title the book until it was almost totally written. Mm-hmm. I believe you're a writer, so you understand when you write a book, sometimes you start writing a book thinking you know what it's going to be about, and by the time you get through it, you've changed. It's like the book wrote you. Uh-huh. And I kind of started off with like 1,000 questions I asked about God. And by the end of the book, Forgiven Sinner, I looked at how we've kind of got snagged, how we lost our traction, if you will, mm-hmm. with really, truly making a change for the better to our human condition.
Right. Yeah, you do. You talk a lot about bringing heaven back to earth and all. It's a good title. Like you said, the book writes the title, not you, and then the book writes you too. So I like that. It's true. It's very much that way. Well, how did you get into this? Let's go back to the beginning, because you've written a couple of other books. I know that. One of them was called Personal Power Fundamentals, and the other one was highly critically acclaimed, Citizen King: The New Age of Power. And now this book, Forgiven Sinner. So where did this all begin? Did you? I know you started out in television, and that's. Go ahead.
I did. Mm-hmm. I worked in TV for 35 plus years, and you know when you work in TV, especially with the big networks, you get video feeds from all over the world. Mm-hmm. I mean, you see the world on a daily basis, and what I was noticing was that we weren't really having much change in our paradigm. War after war, suffering after suffering, exploitation, greed, corruption, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And decade after decade, there wasn't a fundamental change in the story. And I'm kind of a free-thinking, analytical kind of guy. And I've always, from an early teenager, I've been fascinated with what makes people choose what they choose to do. What motivates us as human beings? And so I think all my books kind of stem from this idea of what are we doing as humanity? What are we doing as humans in this collective consciousness? And when are we going to get some traction about fixing some of these problems?
Right, exactly. Well, and one of the things you say in the book is that God with a capital G is not going to be the one doing that. We have to do that because we have free will. So he can't. Nothing can interfere with that. We have to fix ourselves in order to fix humanity. collectively, individually, and then collectively. Does that make sense? Is that right?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, because I think so you were a television engineer. And what got you going with this book, is my understanding, is that you took that invisible power of electricity and everything, even when you were a child, because I remember that you talked about something about putting two wires together and you got a shock. I mean, like literally got a shock in more ways than one. So, and that's happened to you a few times. So you use that analogy of power being created just like it does in electricity as it does in our consciousness as well.
Yeah, I think electricity is a wonderful model to understand consciousness, because lightning is extremely powerful electricity. It's extremely powerful, and so is like a nuclear bomb. That's really powerful, but it's not powerful in a graceful way.
Right.
Human consciousness can take us to the brink of devastation, and it can take us to heaven on earth. I mean, we can solve any of these problems. Human consciousness, I suggest, is the most powerful substance on the planet, specifically because human beings plan, dream, envision the future. Dogs and cats don't sit around and worry about next week or next month. But human beings will make plans for 5 and 10 years down the road. We can daydream something that doesn't even exist in reality and bring it into creation. So we're very, very, very powerful beings. Every one of us is very powerful. But we've never, ever been taught with any kind of merit how to tap that power and bring the full weight of our potential into effect.
Right. Every person, you say too, has and I believe this as well. We all have a divine spark in each of us, and how we harness that and use that is about consciousness, right? Because the thing I have with most people, most of my clients, they want, or even listeners out there, they want to change, but they don't know how, and they try and they fail. And then they make more karmic messes, and then they don't move forward. But everything starts and ends with your level of consciousness. Do you agree with that?
Sure. Yes, indeed. I think a lot of what influences our day-to-day life we're not even conscious of. I think our subconscious, in the vast majority of cases, is by far the most prominent aspect of what influences us in most every aspect of our own demeanor. And until we kind of look at it and poke at it and work with it and then get some traction with it, work with it long enough to get some cause and effect understanding, then I wouldn't expect a whole lot of change. Sure, the conscious mind can make changes one day to the next, but a fundamental change in our condition, like changing our archetypes, if I could use that example,
right.
Going from a poor person to a king, or I think it's all quite programmable. In other words, I don't think we're stuck in any way, shape, or form once we understand the mechanics of human consciousness, karma, and the act of creation.
I agree. I think you even called it divine physics, which I liked.
Yeah.
I wrote that down.
Yeah, what the hell, yo?
Yeah, because and also I know this because I've studied with many great masters, but I've also read a ton of everything. That most mystics and sages understand too that you're not really changing anything out there. Nothing changes out there. What changes is you change. So, I mean, one of the fundamental things I learned when I started out 100,000 years ago is that if you want the world to change, your world to change, you have to change. Right?
Wait, how many years ago? That's got to be a lot of candles on your birthday
I'm
cake.
old. Yeah. I've been doing this a long time, Les. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. You do have to change.
Right.
I mean, for myself, I wouldn't be here talking to you for the first few decades of my career. I was a TV engineer. Mm-hmm. You asked me, hey, what the hell are you going to do for the rest of your life? Well, I'm going to do TV. I mean, that's a stupid question. And then I had a moment that changed my whole life totally, completely and totally. Mm-hmm. And it was so unexpected. I was working with a psychiatrist. He says, hey, let's talk about this anger you have, Les. I'm like, well, I'm not an angry guy. This is really silly. Les, let's talk about anger. I'm like, what? What a waste of time. And he kind of got up in my face and he said, look, it's okay. It's safe. In fact, I want to see your anger. Would you do me a favor and show me your anger? And I tell you what, in that moment, my entire life changed. I didn't understand it at the time, but this huge amount of anger comes streaming out of my consciousness, just like when I push a go button on a very high-powered television transmitter. All this energy starts flowing out of my body, and the wondrous kid was going, what the hell is happening to me? And I kind of did a timeout and said, wait a minute, if that was in my psyche, if that was in my persona and I wasn't aware of it, what else is in there? Mm-hmm. And it turned out anger, which I was not conscious of at all, had dictated a vast majority of my decisions every single day of my life.
Mm. Yeah, that's powerful because that's the subconscious mind. It carries around things that you don't necessarily pay any attention to anymore that are actually causing your creations because you're
That's right.
hanging on to them. So what if first of all, do you think, I mean, you talk a lot about karma in the book. So do you think that we come with soul agreements and we can overcome this karma as we go, or is it something we're going to be kind of stuck with from past lives and things like that?
Well, it's I think for the vast majority of souls on this planet at this time, it's in order for our human condition to get so close to the edge of darkness, I mean, the edge of death, really, it took many, many lifetimes of accumulation of karma.
Right.
And then you think, okay, I want to get rid of the karma. I suggest to you and the listeners that don't assume that you know what your karma is. Just don't assume that. Just put that idea aside and start doing practices that are designed to reveal and heal and release and purify your personal energy persona from the effects of karma in your subconscious, because it's there. I promise you, it's there. Mm-hmm. And if you don't do anything about it, you'll flatline. In other words, karmically, you won't have much difference in your human experience over a single lifetime. But if you do address it, I think you can make very, very significant changes. And I know I have, and I don't stop. I don't assume I'm done. There's more in there, and I've been working on it for 20 years. I love my life. I'm so in love with life, and my life gets better, and it expands, and I'm addicted to a curious delve into the depths of who I am and my potential.
Good. That's how it should be because we are all limitless. You know, we're not.
That's right.
We're not. We can do and have anything. It's just how we get to that place within ourselves and it's not just about, saying you can or going on about that. It's about, I think there's something you said in the book and I have to think about it, but it was something like it's not, because it even says in the Bible, ask and it shall be given. But it's more than that. I think you said it, but it's what do you believe you can ask for that counts.
Sure.
Yeah, because
sure.
And that's where people get stuck because karma itself is not good or bad. Karma is the Sanskrit word that means action. So you can have good action or bad action, but that's up to you. And whatever's happened before doesn't matter anymore. We can't change the past, but we can work karmically to make sure that the cause and the effect are working on our behalf, right?
Sure. You can think of karma like you think of gravity. The principles of gravity don't care if you learn how to walk or not. But gravity's impersonal. Gravity's totally impersonal. And karma, the principles of karma are totally impersonal. Completely, you could think of karma as the physics of consciousness. And so, karma will surrender to you just like gravity will surrender to you once you master gravity the way it is. Once you master the principles of karma the way they are, they're quite timeless and impersonal. There's 7 billion personifications of karmic principles walking around on the planet right now. And not a single one of them has a unique personal relationship like gravity. We all experience gravity exactly the same, and we all experience the mechanics of karma exactly the same. So as soon as we figure it out, we're free. Woohoo!
Ooh, that's powerful. It's true, too. You know, I drop a book, it falls to the floor. President drops the book, it falls to the floor. Doesn't matter. You know, it's
doesn't
true.
Matter.
It doesn't matter, and it's true. That's the same way with karma. So once we figure that out, and that's about, I think it's a lot about being authentic and pure with ourselves. I end my show every week. When I end the show, I say, be you to the full, because that's what's really beautiful. I think being your authentic self is one of the most important things you can do, because then you fall into this mastering the art of creation naturally.
Sure. My book, Personal Power Fundamentals, the tagline is Pure Authentic You.
I like that.
Personal Power Fundamentals talks about the physics of karma and teaches you how to understand when you're taking karma on, and very much more importantly, how to surrender the karma that you don't even know that you have in your persona. But to speak to your point of purity and authenticity, that is a reflection of forgiven sinner, because I talk about those two attributes. When you look at the language of divinity, the higher up you go in consciousness, the shorter the sentences get. The burning bush says, I am that I am. Get over it. No, wait, I added that second part.
Yeah. The burning bush didn't say that part. Right. No, you say this a lot in the book. You say this a lot in the book. Two things that you say a lot in the book, I mean, almost in every single chapter, is I am that I am, and the other thing you say is as it is. And one is from the Bible, the burning bush, and the other one is from the Bhagavad Gita. So,
yes.
Yeah, expand on that. Go ahead, because this is important.
Well, in the beginning, let's say before the beginning, well, that suggests time. No, I'm not going to mangle my own sentences. Before there was creation, you can think of it as non-dual or non-local space. There was no duality. And then in the first impulse of creation, we created polarity. And in that first impulse of polarity, there was no attributes at all, except maybe yin and yang, or masculine or feminine, really root fundamental attributes. And then every single step beyond that embellished upon that first creation. You could, in a sense, you could call that the first sin, because it created a unique experience. Karma creates unique experiences. But I don't want to, I'm getting into shop talk here. Let's get to the point. So imagine you're sitting or standing right where you are right now, and poof, Jesus Christ is standing right next to you. And he goes, here, hold my beer, check this out. And he snaps his fingers, and there's a bushel of fish instantly out of thin air. Mm-hmm. The reason he could do that is there was no energy contrary. There was nothing contrary to his creation. The moment he wanted to create something, there was no energy contrary. So if you think about the quantum mirror or a mirror in and of itself, it reflects the totality of the image. So purity gives you power. Purity, you can think of a homeless vet with PTSD panhandling on the corner, and then think of Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. Well, the vet has loaded up his psyche with unresolved consciousness. And so it's not pure. And that's fine. There's no issue there. But he can't create hardly anything outside of a continuation of his own existence. Where Jesus can walk around and he heals the sick and he creates stuff out of thin air and he raises the dead, he performs all kinds of miracles. And I suggest it's because of purity. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Mm-hmm. They shall see the divinity of all that is.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I think purity is sort of like the transmitter.
The wand.
The wand. Yeah, the magic. Yeah, if there were going to be a magic wand, that would be it. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that because you're right, and that's what our ego does. Because I think we need our ego. I don't think ego is I've heard many different philosophies on this, but our ego is our personality. So we have to have that so we can change as well. But if you let that take over, then you can't have purity. Purity is that ability to not allow.
The ego can live in a pure condition. The ego doesn't have to accumulate karma.
Right. That's exactly what I'm saying. We need our ego. It can live. It just can't take over. That's all.
Well, the day we were born, and how many years ago was it for you? I'm kidding you again.
Thousands.
The day we were born, we didn't have an ego, but we existed just fine in a body. So we don't need an ego to exist in the body, but to plan and visualize and create. Mm-hmm. The ego is a very useful tool. I suggest teach your ego how totally awesome it would be if your ego would let go of the reins, let go of the steering wheel, and let your heart and your soul take over your life. And the ego doesn't have to figure anything out. It was never intended to be the planner. Your heart and your soul are the planner.
That's right.
The ego executes the plan, but it doesn't come up with the plan.
Right. It was never supposed to be the master. It's supposed to be the servant of the soul. That's how what I learned. And you're saying the same thing. So I think we agree. And that's where a lot of people get stuck because again, they want to change, just like you were talking about the panhandler on the street corner. Now that may not be it. It may just be a job you don't like, or the fact that you can't pay your bills every month, or that you're in a bad marriage, or whatever it is that is going on in your life. The reason the patterns continue over and over again is because you can't get beyond that thinking. Right.
It's an inside job. You want anything outside of you to change, look inside.
That's right. You want your world to change, you have to change. Yes?
Sure.
No, sure. I like that. Les, we're getting halfway through the show already. It's going. I have lots. Huh? Go ahead.
You can have me back. I mean,
I know. We're already halfway through. So I just have to tell people out there that we're on the line with Les Jensen, and I want people to know how they can find you. The name of the book is Forgiven Sinner, God's Last Savior. And Les, it's Les, L-E-S, and the last name is Jensen. And I think we can find you at lesjensen.com, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And then you started something called New Human Living. as well,
right.
which I want you to talk about. But you also have a newhumanliving.com website as well. True?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Go
ahead.
Do you want me to talk about it?
Yeah. I want you to tell people what that is. Mm-hmm.
New Human Living, I don't tell you what to think or believe. That's not my role. I'm here to teach you how to get a fulcrum on your own consciousness so you can affect change in your own life and create the life that you want to fulfill the vision of your soul. I can't create sentences that appeal to some people and not to others. I only talk about the mechanics of how to get there. Mm-hmm. And then the inspiration comes from within you. So New Human Living is about teaching your ego how to understand how powerful it is to trust your heart and your soul, how to cleanse your karma, and how to execute, how to bring about the visions that your soul is showing you.
Right. Absolutely. And it's newhumanliving.com. And your website is lesjensen.com. I know you also do a radio show too. And I think it's New Human Living Radio, right?
Yes.
And they can... Go ahead.
You can get that through the newhumanliving.com website. I host it through Blog Talk Radio, New Human Living Radio.
Okay, and it's live, right? Correct?
Yes.
And when is your show on?
Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Mountain Time.
There you go. And you can find that again on newhumanliving.com/radio. And are you, do you get out there, Les? Are you doing workshops and talks, and can people hear you live some places?
Well, they're hearing me live now.
I know.
Most of my work in this moment is through my books, and but I am starting an online school education platform that people can enter and master their life and then let go of. It's not a religion in any sense. That I don't want to park in your consciousness. I don't want an eternal spot in your thinking. But I do want you to really get very, very skilled at being a powerful player in this human condition.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. I'm glad you don't want to rent a room in my brain. I've got enough stuff in there.
That's
but already,
right.
yeah,
That's right.
I'm not renting rooms in my brain anymore. It's been a long time.
That's right. Bravo.
You have such an interesting background too, because really, what religion were you? Because you came from a huge family in Utah. So you started out, I suppose, as a Mormon, correct?
I did, yes. I was born and raised in a very staunch and strict Mormon household in a small town in Utah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. It's fascinating. And then here you are talking about consciousness. And do you practice any religion now, or is that too personal? You don't have to answer that if you don't want to.
Unconditional love for all that is, for everything that exists, as it exists, exactly as it exists now. Unconditional love.
Well,
period.
and that goes back to I am that I am, right?
Sure.
And as it is. So you've studied quite a bit too, from other than just the burning bush. We've got, as it is very powerful as well in the Bhagavad Gita.
Sure.
All right, I'm going to open up the lines since we're kind of winding down the show here. If anybody's brave enough to call in and talk to Les with a question about anything, this is a very intelligent man who's been studying consciousness for a long time. And please do so, 949-313-8880. The lines are open. If you have a call or you have a question, call. It doesn't work the other way. If you have a call, question us. It goes the other way. Sorry. I'm fired. I know. That's okay. We're just going to keep going because this is a fascinating subject, and it's,
Well, call in quick because my meds are good for only another 20 minutes. No, I'm kidding. That was a joke.
And then what happens? Do you just fall asleep?
No, that's a joke. There's no meds.
I know there's no meds. You don't need them. I think, okay, there's so much more to talk about, but I think one of the ways that we can really help people is to give them a few, because it is about purity, but then, and you're clearing your consciousness, you're trying to raise it to a different frequency, a different level. That's the only way you can. If you don't go there consciously, then either the change won't happen, or if it happens, you'll sabotage it. So, one of the ways I find best to do that is meditation. So do you meditate, Les?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
No, yes, I do. But, if you're looking for a quick and easy thing to bring more power into your life, you can kick your own ass with a bunch of Post-it notes. Go buy a pack of Post-it notes and put some by your bed and put some by the kitchen sink, one in the car. And you're going to have a sentence pop in your head when your mind is busy doing something else. You're unloading the car, you're taking the groceries in the house, and a single sentence will pop in your head. Why don't you go back to school? Why don't you write that book? Why don't you start taking classes? And when that single sentence pops in your head out of nowhere, write that sucker down. Write it down exactly as you heard it. Because if you don't write it down, what we do is the very next thought, we drag that brilliance up into our ego and bitch slap it with, I can't write a book. Who wants to read what I have to say? I suck at grammar. And our ego rationalizes something that's already been vetted. Your heart and your soul know everything about you. Mm-hmm. So when those sentences come around, write them down. And then after a couple of weeks or a couple of months, collect them, and you'll see a theme of what your soul's telling you to do to change the vector of your life path.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's really good. That's really good advice.
It's very powerful. It's very powerful. It'll kick your butt, I promise.
Yeah.
Well, you'll kick your butt.
Well, yeah, you end up kicking your own butt, really, because really, if you're paying attention, because really, there's a place in the book, too, where you say, get interested in what you are here to do. Every soul has a path. We're all here to do something. It's almost like we're, before we got here, we came up with a script and we knew what our soul needed to learn, and we went about it, didn't we?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, some of us did, but our egos can consume 100% of our consciousness with repetitive thoughts that really don't change much.
Okay. I have
Go ahead.
I have a question from a caller who did not call in, who wants to remain anonymous, who's calling in questioning in from Phoenix, Arizona. And the question is, I have those thoughts when I am sleeping. Does that apply too?
Sure. Mm-hmm. If you think those thoughts are from your soul or from your heart, yes. But you got to be careful, because the untrained ego or the jealous ego will feed you a crock of crap because the ego wants to be safe. The ego wants to make sure that it knows what the next step is. So certainly write down those thoughts that you mentioned, but also write down the ones that happen spontaneously at other times, and then compare notes.
So
good question.
Yeah, it's a good question. How do people know when they're getting information from their heart and soul as opposed to their head and their ego?
Well, if you don't have a rapport with your heart and your soul, it's going to be what I was just mentioning. Your mind will be busy doing something else. You're doing the dishes, you're in the shower, and that single sentence will pop in your consciousness like a tangent, like a new paradigm. And like I said, most people take it up into their mind with the very next thought and rationalize it. Well, the sentences from your heart and your soul are pre-vetted. They don't need to be rationalized at all by your ego. Your heart and your soul are much, much wiser than your ego. So your ego doesn't have to say, well, that's a good idea or it's a bad idea. I mean, certainly there'll be a higher wisdom that shows up over time.
Well,
your heart and your soul can say, you're going to be on Broadway as a performing dancer. That doesn't mean you sell your house and move the next day. Mm-hmm. But you do start creating that opportunity for that life path to show up in your future.
Darn, I was going to sell a house, go to Broadway.
I never saw myself an author. I promise you, I never, ever, ever thought I would write a single book in my life.
Wow.
Now I've written several books.
Well, I never.
And I'm right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you're writing another? Are you doing another one right now?
Oh, I'll write 15 or 20 books in this lifetime.
Good for you. See, I never thought I would be doing a radio show. Never. That never occurred to me. That was not in my. I thought I'd be a writer.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and here I am.
And that's the kind of change your heart and your soul brings about. But how do you feel about following that inspiration?
Yeah, you know, like I know when I meditate because I've been doing it for, remember, thousands of years here. I can't get over that part. I do have to say though, with me, because I paid attention to it for so long, my heart and soul will never say like I should do this or I should do that. Right. My heart and always says we. When I get a spontaneous thought like, oh, we should go there, I know that's my heart, my soul speaking. You know?
Right.
Because it's not an I thing. It's a very kind of like we, okay. We should do a radio show, and then suddenly I am. You know? I mean, I've been doing it for years. I've been doing it for few years now, but when I first started doing it, I was like, oh yeah, we should do that. And then suddenly I got a phone call from somebody who said they were starting a station, and out of the blue. And that's how that happens, right?
Yeah. Synchronicity.
Well, I think when you're pure and you are being your authentic self, then that happens naturally. Do you agree?
Sure, but how many people do that? I'd say a fraction of 0.1%.
Right. And or they'll say it was a coincidence, but if you talk to a lot of successful people, which I'm very fortunate to do, there's always that aspect. There's always that I was in the right place at the right time, or God smiled on me, or something. But I think it was just I think that synchronicity was all because they were really right there with the purity and the authenticity.
Your soul goes out before you into the, quote, future, that intangible aspect of time. Your soul lines up opportunities. But, again, the ego is the lowest common denominator. If your ego's got your face planted in your phone, or running a bunch of karmic reactions of emotional and mental despair, it doesn't matter what your heart and your soul throw at you, you're not going to do it. So
no, that's right.
The old mythology of what it means to be powerful is what doesn't apply anymore. We're understanding quantum physics, we're understanding purity consciousness. There's going to be legions of sages and mystics and alchemists, and it's going to be more common, a more everyday kind of thing. And purity and authenticity, I suggest purity and authenticity are the only two terms you can use towards a person or personal energy persona, and not taint it with an expectation. Purity and authenticity don't define any traits, and that's why I use them. They're void of expectation.
Exactly. They are just, I am who I am. I am that I am. That's that. Like you said, get over it. Because I am that
right.
I am. And this
karma
one
doesn't care.
No, and what you said is powerful with it, because it applies to everything. It applies to relationships. It applies to who you are in the world. Like, I know people all the time, I can't meet anybody, but their consciousness isn't ready to, because they're fighting themselves on some level, consciously. Again, we go back to the consciousness. So so this is going to lead right into forgiveness. But before I do that, if you have a question or you want to text me, if you don't want to call in, or email, however you want to do it, it's 949-313-8880. We're on the line with Les Jensen. We're slowly running out of time, but the name of the book is Forgiven Sinner, God's Last Savior. But I do have to touch on one last subject, because I've got a million notes here, and that is forgiveness. Because what I was just talking about, Les, about, relationships and money or whatever it is that your issue is, a lot of that is because we need to go in and clear up our karma. And how we do that, I believe, is that we have to forgive ourselves. We have to forgive other people, ourselves, God, everything, right?
Well, sure. Forgiveness opens up your power, because if you see yourself as guilty in some fashion, I'm a sinner and therefore I'm guilty, then automatically in your mind, what do we do with guilty people? We lock them up. What do we do with guilty people? We punish them. So the idea that you need forgiveness automatically disconnects you from your power. Mm-hmm. Now, forgiveness, all the souls on the planet chose to go this far into the darkness. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna's there in the chariot, and the guy says, Lord Krishna, God, these are my uncles, my cousins, and we're about to go to war. What the hell? And Krishna said, well, claim your glory. And the point is, no soul has ever died on planet Earth. The souls come here to experience every flavor of karma possible. And on this planet, at this time, I suggest to you, you're living on the most advanced classroom of karma in perhaps the entire galaxy. In other words, if you're living on this planet at this time, you're one of the most advanced souls taking the most challenging class perhaps possible in how to be in the karmic storm and learn how to love without condition. If you pull that off, you're a master soul. You're a master of human consciousness. You're a master of the human paradigm.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's and that's not easy to do. but I mean, really, because I remember I was diagnosed last year with a very rare form of ovarian cancer, and I had a radical operation and chemotherapy, the whole thing. But the whole time I was in the middle of that, I stopped and I said, what is it I'm supposed to be learning? Why am I going through this? There's a reason. Right. There's a reason my soul chose to do that. Whether it kills me or not is beside the point. What am I supposed to get from this so that it karmically doesn't repeat or take me down in that way? Do you know what I'm saying?
Sure, yes, indeed. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, so I totally agree with everything you just said. So we have to come to a place where I think one of the ways, because we talked about authenticity and purity, but when people are out there like, well, how do we do that? Just like when Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss, it was like, well, bliss? I have bills to pay. I'm going to go bankrupt, and you want me to follow my bliss? So I think it's one of the ways that you can do that is to becoming authentic and pure means that you're in touch with your divine self. And it's all about coming back to that self-love, and that has to do with forgiveness.
Sure, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Personal Power Fundamentals talks about, are you putting energy, are you accumulating energy in your psyche, which would be taking on karma? Are you breaking even, or are you releasing karma? Because just like gravity, karma doesn't care. It'll drive your life into the ground over and over and over. Just like if you don't master how to walk, you'll crawl everywhere. Gravity doesn't care. Mm-hmm. Karma doesn't care either. So the forgiveness is very powerful, yes. In Citizen King, The New Age of Power, I talk about dominion and sovereignty. To have dominion. When Jesus walked into a scenario, he had a sense of dominion that he could influence the collective experience in that moment. And so he healed people on the spot. He fed people on the spot. He performed miracles on the spot because he had dominion over his own consciousness, and he had the personal sovereignty to say, my thoughts count as much as anybody else. We got a lot of unprogramming to do because most of how we were brought up, it's a polar opposite of being powerful.
Mm-hmm. That's true. It is true for most people. Yeah. It's like because I think in A Course in Miracles it says, it's not that we're not, you're not being egotistical if you think you're powerful. That's the opposite. You are powerful. You're being egotistical if you think you're nothing. It's like, or something.
Right, yes.
I'm paraphrasing, obviously, yes. But it's like
indeed.
It's not doing anybody any good to play small. That you're not supposed to. That's
at all.
At all. And that's what it talks about.
Trust in your sickle. Take the harvest. Trust in your sickle. You're
right.
here to have dominion over your condition. So
right.
have dominion.
Yeah, and it's not a narcissistic thing. It's just about understanding that we all have that divinity within us, that divine spark. We're a part of something really amazing. And then it becomes about self-love in a sense of just more of a appreciation of who and what we truly are. It's not anything more than that. And then it's almost self-investing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'm talking off the top
yep.
of my head, but that,
yeah, indeed.
Yeah, and I think
it takes practice to turn the boat around.
Right, exactly. And then you can just throw the oars in the damn water and float, right? Yeah, I think it's great. I'm having a ton of fun. We're almost out of time, so I don't think we can take another caller. I've gotten a bunch of text messages for some reason tonight, including from the lovely woman in Phoenix, Arizona, that are all saying that they're enjoying the show tremendously. I mean, from Salt Lake City to Houston, Texas. I've got a bunch of places, and people are just enjoying the heck out of you, Les. So that's great.
I hope so.
They didn't have a question. They just said, great show, really enjoying you. And, it's really, that's a lot of that coming in. So how can people find you? Let's tell them one more time before we wind up and let you go.
Sure. The easiest thing you can do is go to newhumanliving.com. Mm-hmm. And my books are there. You can sign up for the newsletter. I'm going to fill your mind full of powerful thoughts to help awaken the inherently divine power within you. LesJensen.com that talks about kind of where I came from and my upbringing, so you know who's behind the voice. And then the New Human Living radio show that you can get through the newhumanliving.com website. I've interviewed just hundreds and hundreds of people about the power of human consciousness. Mm-hmm. So I'm in love with humanity, and I have so much compassion for the human heart. I'm here to help all those who seek to fully embody their own divine potential.
Oh, that's lovely. And Another listener out there says it is a grand show. So thank you.
Yeehaw!
Yeehaw. Thank you for that. And I hope that you learned a lot, because that's the point. Now, when you do your radio show, just briefly, I only interview authors. That's why it's called Intuitive Inc., I-N-K. Are you interviewing spiritual people? Are they authors? Are they...
Anybody who can share insight. Quantum physicists, shamans, energy masters, people who channel divinity. I don't leave any stone unturned. If somebody's got an insight that relates to our human potential, I'll have a conversation about it. So I talk to really all walks of life as it relates to human consciousness.
That's right. And again, I can't stress this enough. It's only about human consciousness. We can't really change the world until we change ourselves. And then one by one, we can change everything else. You know, it starts inside, not outside, right?
The most powerful thing you can do is purify yourself, understand your own authenticity, and if you want to kick some really divine ass, learn how to embody unconditional love. Learn how to embody unconditional love for all that is, just as it is right now.
Mm-hmm. Right. Just be who you are now. Be you to the full, which is how I end my show. But it's not over yet. We still got 2 more minutes here. And I just want to wrap it up. You've been amazing. I think the book is great. It's called Forgiven Sinner, God's Last Savior. And you are writing another book. So that means we're going to have you back on, right, Les?
Oh, you bet. I won't stop until I do a head plan in the soup. I mean, I'm gonna do this till the day I die.
Well, that could be thousands of years, like me.
That's fine. Woohoo! Bring it. I'm ready.
I know. It's really. I mean, it just could go on and on. It was a wonderful show. I really highly recommend the book. I read it, obviously, because I know I went through it, and it's got some really good information in there. But it's not just the same old. You put it in a very unique way. And I think that could really help people, because it really does get down to the nitty gritty. And I really did I'm going to have you back to talk about more of the divine physics and the whole hologram thing. We didn't get into that, but that was really interesting as well. And, and
sure,
a couple of other things that, when you get to that place of authenticity and purity, that you're not dumbing yourself down anymore. You're kind of, there were so many more other things I wanted to talk about. So, Les, can we have you back?
You betcha. Anytime.
I love it. Thank you for calling in tonight and spending your Sunday night with us. I really appreciate it. You take care, and thank you for being a guest tonight.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Take care. Good night.
Bye.
Good night. Great show, guys. Great show. I love him. He's wonderful. Forgiven Sinner, God's Last Savior. His name again is Les Jensen, Jensen. And he gave you his website several times, but I'll do it one more time. It is lesjensen.com, and then he started something called newhumanliving.com. That's his, he started that himself. I think he started in 2009. It's a global platform to assist humanity in discovering its own truth. He's kind of the real deal too. He's extremely authentic. And there's no BS about him, and he's really just trying to help people. So I really appreciate that, and I love that, and that's the energy I kind of keep trying to attract, and I do. So there you go. And then for me, all know where to find me. And if you don't, it's servethassan.com. It's servethassan.com. You can email me there as well, servet@servethassan.com. I love your comments. I love your suggestions. I love everything that you tell me. It's all good. We have one more show next week before we take a break for the Thanksgiving holiday, so I won't be doing a show that week for sure. And it's kind of an awesome show. She was going to do the Halloween show, but we got Stacey DeMarco from Australia, the Modern Witch, who I loved, and she had a grand time. I've gotten some really good feedback from her. She just loved doing that show. But next week I have Sherilyn Darcy, and she's written a book called The Book of Flower Spells. But it actually really, I mean, flowers and plants and things can really heal you in ways that you wouldn't imagine. So, and she's got a flower spell for everything. So she's gonna be a ton of fun too. And then we'll wind up for Thanksgiving, and I'll do a couple of shows just before Christmas. And then next year we're gonna do a whole new group of people. It's gonna be fascinating. And again, any comments, ServetHassan.com. You can go on there and find me. You can also find out about private consultations and the blog, the podcast, everything else that's coming up and is out there now. And the website is brand new too. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. ServetHassan.com. And I've got to say, be you to the full. I've said it several times tonight, but that is what it's all about. And Les touched on that again and again and again. It's all about being your authentic self, because when you do that, you stop fighting the other stuff. And he quoted the Bible several times, because that is what the burning bush was all about. I am that I am. And that's all about that too. Be you to the full. And that's what's beautiful. And I'll talk to you all next week. Stay tuned for another great show. Thank you so much. Take care and good night.